The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Tell us about the last year or the last 6-9 months or so in the price of lumber, and let us know what it's been doing. But then let's kind of dive into why it's been doing it, because I think if people understand that, they can understand what may happen to not only other commodities, but the prices of goods and services in the future.
Yeah. Lumber has had an incredible story, unlike anything that anybody would have ever anticipated with the price moves that's taken place. Really, we could go on for hours, because the story goes way back. It goes back, many years ago. And if you include some of the trade war tariffs and stuff like that with Canada, the lumber price story can just take back many, many decades. But really, over the last year, maybe even 2 years, there's been some really significant things that have happened with lumber mill curtailments, lumber supply, the trade wars, bugs, fires. I mean, all this stuff has happened in the last couple of years, and it's really done a number to the pricing. But if we just kind of take it back to just what's happened in the last year, basically since March, since last March, when the pandemic first hit and everybody was freaking out about that, they locked down everybody, including buildings, homes, everything stopped. We were even trying to figure out what it is we were going to do with our location here. It's just like, do we cut back hours? Do we cut back man hours? I mean, what do we do here? And the mills thought the same thing. Nobody's going to be building, curtailments, inventories, depletion. Everybody was kind of getting ready for this, everybody's going to be locked down, not doing anything. Stimulus checks come out, people start buying. So at the same time that there was this huge inventory depletion and the price of lumber, just to kind of give you an idea on price of lumber at that time, the lumber is priced out in the futures on a per thousand basis. So for every 1,000 board feet, it'll cost a certain amount of dollars. So back in March, it had dropped down all the way down to 250 per thousand. Now, to kind of relate that to a 2x4, like standard and better, which is the most common piece of lumber you're going to get out there, that takes a 2x4 down to around $2.50 or so. Depends on how long it stays at that 250 per thousand, or stuff like that. But that's ultimately what happens with the retail prices. It brings that down too. So this lockdown takes place during this time when there's curtailment, inventory depletion, stimulus checks go out, and people are at home wanting to improve their surroundings. They need to work from home. They want to, they're going to be spending summer at home. So they build a new deck. They put a fence up to block the neighbor out. And there was a big demand for wood right then. And it just shot the inventory to depletion. There was nothing left. Mills started firing up to try and fill in the inventory. But once you have a depletion of this level during a time when there all of a sudden starts to be a building increase taking place, because as the lockdowns were coming out, people went back into building, interest rates were really low and people wanted to start building. Everybody's out there buying and there's no supply, and the prices just shot through the roof. Went all the way up from 250 per thousand, all the way up to 1,000 per thousand by the end of summer.
Wow.
And stores were selling for $8. It was unreal. Unlike anything that anybody had ever anticipated was going to happen. The price of the average home, from what I understand, to frame an average home increased by $10,000-$15,000, and I can imagine it was probably even more on some of the higher end homes that use a little bit more material and stuff.
Yeah. Do you know Ken McElroy?
I'm sorry?
Do you know Ken McElroy?
Yeah,
he's on YouTube. He does most of Robert Kiyosaki's investing in real estate. And he and I were at dinner the other night, and we were talking about cost per square foot for new builds, not including the land or the permits, just the construction costs. And I've got something to compare it to, because back in 2013, 14, I did a new build in Northeast Portland, out by Mount Tabor. And so I bought a lot, we subdivided it, and on the new lot, I built a brand new home. It was, I can't recall, maybe 3,000 square feet, something like that. But anyway, my cost to build there, because I was partnering with a GC buddy of mine, was, so minus the GC cost, because he was taking a portion of the profit, it was about $120, $130 a square foot. And I was talking to Ken, because he's in the process right now of building some apartment complexes from scratch. So this would be all apartment grade finishes. and he's saying he's spending between $200 and $240 a foot.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wow!
So I don't know if that's consistent with what you're hearing from the GCs there locally, but and also another thing I want to point out for the listener and the viewer is notice that what we're talking about is not only the demand side of the equation, but also the supply side.
Yes.
In the comments of my videos and on Twitter, and I'm sure you get this a lot, people, for some reason, they get just hyper focused on demand. Well, demand is going to crash. The economy is going to crash. There's no more demand. There's no more demand. There's no more demand because the economy is suffering. All these businesses are going bust. I totally get it. And I agree. But the question isn't exclusively is demand going up or down. The question is how fast is supply going down or up relative to demand. So if both are going down, but supply is going down faster, which it sounds like kind of what happened back in March and April, you can still see the price of XYZ triple, quadruple. So I just wanted to point that out for the viewers. But anyway, are those the prices that you're seeing per square foot for the new builds?
Well, when it comes to the new builds, I'm not sure exactly what these contractors and what the new price is as far as compared to the material increase.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure where they're at on it. I know a lot of contractors have come to me, and I wish I was a little bit more involved in some of the bigger projects. I really don't do that for my company. I am more the kind of guy who, when you need a special order door, you need windows, you need siding, you need stuff like that. I'm the guy who comes and searches out all the specialty items for you.
Okay.
That's kind of what I do there. So I'm not directly involved in some of the house packages that go out, although I am right there. I'm the guys are just right there, and I talk to them all the time. I'm not exactly sure where the price per foot that the contractors are at on it, or what the framing that they're bidding it out at. I know a lot of guys have gotten burned on these prices because even in November, what was it, November? Yeah, I think it was back in November, the price per 1,000 actually had a significant drop from that peak. And I thought, okay, here we go. We're going to come into the wintertime, slow down for the building season. You would typically see prices come down. And I thought, okay, well, that was a crazy summer, all-time highs. But then it bounced and it started coming back up again. Mm-hmm. And so now here, I checked it just before we started the video. I think we're back up to 913 per 1,000 again, which is just it's within sight of the all-time highs again. Why? And if it continues here during this wintertime, where there was typically a slowdown, and we go into the start of the new season at 1,000 per 1,000 on the lumber prices, just as demand is starting to pick up, without saying something unforeseen happening within the economy to change the way things are going.
Yeah.
Next year's building costs are going to be even more than last year.
As you know, it's the famous saying that's so true, and I've heard Jim Rogers say it a million times. The cure for high prices are high prices. So why have these high prices not cured themselves? In other words, why isn't there just a ton more supply coming online to bring the prices back down to something that would be quote unquote normal?
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting question, because I have asked a lot of people about that. And I have a buddy who works here at our local mill, and he says, I don't know, man, we're running full steam. We're pumping out as much lumber as we can. And I talked to a logging buddy of mine, and he says, yeah, they had a lot of logging is I'm still trying to learn how it is that logging happens, because the time that they decide that they're going to cut those trees, so the time it turns into lumber is quite a ways difference.
Right.
And during the lockdown, there was wood on the ground that has to get cleared. I mean, they have to take it. And there was no demand at the time that this was taking place. So there was kind of an interesting, kind of timber glut right there. So as the lumber started kind of ramping up and getting, kind of moving through the system again, there was this glut of timber that was going through. I mean, my buddy was telling me, he was like, man, I've never had to sweep the shop before. I mean, he's always out in the woods, but he said there was times where there was nothing to do. So he had to sweep, he was just doing anything around the shop that they could do. And so there was kind of like this weird, like kind of timber glut that took place right there. But I would have assumed that that would have cleared out by now and that things would kind of be going back into normal. One of the other things is that the mills up in Canada were pumping out a lot of lumber a couple of years ago. There's a place called 100 Mile up in British Columbia area. That's all they have up there. That's it. It's just trees and mills and generation. And that, yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny to say, but there's nothing. That's all they got. And when that whole trade war and everything started kicking in, and the United States put this huge tariff on softwoods coming out of Canada, it devastated those mills up there. It killed them. And there was a bunch of shutdowns that took place up there. And I was reading some of the articles about it, and it was quite sad. I mean, these people saying my dad worked here, my grandfather worked here, my kids were going to work here. So when those things got shut down, you can't just fire it back up and say, okay, let's just start pumping out a bunch more lumber again. I mean, once it's done, it's done, Right. And so there was like a supply production issue that had, kind of hit the system back then that really isn't firing back up the way it used to. So I think it was probably more in the fact that there was that wave of shutdowns, that mill curtailments and shutdowns that take place that really doesn't allow for, the robust system of supply again.